I love Rope, which is to say, Alfred Hitchcock's 1948 movie Rope. I've loved it ever since I first saw it, and I think I might be in the minority when I say it's one of his best films. Certainly, it's one of my personal favorites. But be that as it may, I've always been a little frustrated by it. Well, not the film per se, but about what people think or talk about when it comes to the film itself. And so I've used my very rudimentary knowledge of iMovie to put this together and hope to dispel a few myths. Now, one of the first things you will hear people talk about when it comes to Rope is that it was filmed in one continuous take. That, of course, would be probably people who don't know much about the film saying that. If they do know about it, they will say that it was shot to look like it was all done in one continuous take, which is to say, no cuts whatsoever. Now, it's a conceit that goes along with something that Hitchcock liked to play with, the idea of a full movie taking place in a single set. He did it here. He did it a few years before this with a movie called Juno and the Paycock, and more famously with Lifeboat. And then he would do it a few years later with Dial M for Murder, and then Rear Window. Now, Rear Window, of course, uses many other locations, which are shot for the most part from the vantage point of Jimmy Stewart's apartment. So the conceit there is a bit of a cheat, but let's stick with Rope. Again, we're in 1948, and in 1948, Hitchcock was in a very interesting position when it came to making films, in particular Rope. He was officially free from his contract with David O. Selznick, which was a fraught relationship to say the least. For more on that, I urge you to read the book Hitchcock and Selznick by Leonard Leff, or see the documentary from the American Masters series on PBS, Hitchcock, Selznick, and the End of Hollywood. I have links in the description below. Their first collaboration was the movie Rebecca, during the making of which they were at odds pretty much the entire time. So after that, Selznick pretty much sold the services of Hitchcock to other studios, reaping the monetary benefits of that kind of contractual ownership, if you will, of Hitchcock. Hitchcock, meanwhile, managed to reap his own benefits by, essentially learning to make movies the Hollywood way. And through that, he was able to turn out some rather good work, including Foreign Correspondent, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Suspicion, Saboteur, Shadow of a Doubt, Lifeboat, and finally, Spellbound. But two very exacting personalities that were David O. Selznick and Alfred Hitchcock do not a great working relationship make. So it was inevitable that they part ways, the contract was not renewed, and the final film that they almost worked on together, Notorious, it was supposed to have been a Selznick production, but he was too busy working on the movie Duel in the Sun. So he pretty much let Hitchcock kind of run with that one, and it was very much Hitchcock's film. And from there, he became the producer of all his films from then on. But that wasn't enough. With Rope, he really wanted to try something new. First off, he was working with Technicolor for the first time. He was also, again, going for that single set concept. Now, single sets generally are what you get in a play. So it's only natural that he use a play as his starting point here. In this case, it was a 1929 production by Patrick Hamilton, also called Rope. Given that the play was done in effectively real time, with continuous action all the way through, he considered that the film should do the same thing. It should have no break in the storytelling either. In this case, it apparently starts around 7:30 p.m. and then finishes around 9:15 p.m. As he said to Francois Truffaut in the famous conversations that they had together, I got this crazy idea of doing it in one shot, the whole film. When I look back, it's quite nonsensical. I was breaking all of my own traditions and using film and the cutting of film to tell a story. Still, as nonsensical as it was, Hitchcock was determined to forge ahead with this stunt, as he called it later. But the idea was far too technically complex for the times. Again, this is 1948. Video, digital, Steadicams, these are decades away. Movies that managed to pull off the one continuous shot for the entire run, things like Russian Ark or Time Code, could never have been done back then. We're still talking about film in the camera here, and the cameras then could only hold about 10 minutes of film at any one time. So, what to do? Well, like he did with Rear Window, he cheated it. He worked it out so that when it was time for a cut, he maneuvered the camera into someone's back or their side or an object to black out the image. Then the camera can cut, the actors can relax since they had been performing straight, hoping to goodness that they didn't flub a line and have to start everything all over again. And the camera would then pick up the move with a new magazine full of film. Add some voiceover to match the words, and there you have it. Simple. Well, maybe not, but he still pulled it off, as you can see now, with the 5 sequences where the camera does just that.
We have a very simple excuse right here. What are you worrying about, Philip? After all, old Mr. Kentley's coming mainly to look at these books now. Would you mind taking this into Janet?
Sure. Why?
No particular reason. It's hers. I thought you'd like to take it into her. She's in the bedroom telephoning.
Then you'd like David to walk in.
Oh, no, that'd be too much of a shock.
When were you born?
July 14th. Can you really tell my future from that?
Of course, I'm only an amateur astrologer.
I'm sure you're very good.
What did you mean? Something gone wrong?
Well, you always plan your party so well, it's odd to have anything go wrong. She seems to be missing David. As a matter of fact, I'm beginning to miss him myself.
Aren't we all?
Mind your P's and Q's.
Who are you calling?
Only the garage.
Go ahead and look. I hope you like what you see.
So the funny thing here is, not that he did it, and that it, pretty much works, but the part that people tend to forget or never really notice, and I say that because I watched the film with my daughter recently, and she didn't notice either, even though I had told her ahead of time that it would happen. There are 5 other cuts in the film that do not use that technique. They are straight cuts, very visible, not hidden whatsoever, and nobody talks about them. Here they are.
Lady are much better than you think.
What do you mean?
Janet!
Hello, ducks. Angel. Be careful of my hair. It took hours.
One of the subjects for our dinner table suddenly rebelled. Like Lazarus, he rose...
That's a lie.
Philip.
There's no word of truth in the whole story.
No, he's more likely mixing his drinks.
You seem rather upset yourself.
Do I?
Yes, there's something upsetting both of you a great deal. Something that,
Excuse me, sir. There's a lady phoning for either Mr. Kentley or Mrs. Atwater.
Oh, it must be Alice.
Well, let me see. Well, I think I'd get Philip to help me carry him out of the room.
Far be it from me to penalize Alfred Hitchcock for doing it like this. I'm sure there was a reason they had to have these visible cuts. I've heard that it had to do with the changing of reels in the actual theaters where this film would eventually be shown. Again, we're talking about physical film here where a reel can only go so long before you have to switch to a different camera, and then continue with the movie. probably it had something to do with relighting the background, the cityscape that's behind them. Very technical, making that all work. As it was, technically, the making of this film was a monstrous task with the cameras, which again are not digital, not Steadicams. They are big hunks of metal and have to move around quite a bit, with sets coming apart and props and furniture needing to be moved to accommodate it all. And as I say, you don't really notice. I had seen this movie many times before putting this together, and I still spotted one I'd never noticed before. So, anyway, the bottom line is, we got to put the rumor finally to bed that this is shot as if it's one continuous take. It's not. There are visible cuts in the film. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the Hitchcock cameo. Now, many people know that Hitchcock loved putting himself into his films. There are lists and YouTube videos which detail all the spots where Hitchcock does a cameo in his films. It became a thing, so much so that in his later films, he said that he put the cameos in as close to the front of the picture as possible so that they would be done and out of the way, the audience could see them, get the joy of spotting them, and then enjoy the rest of the movie without concentrating on looking for him. Having a single set with a continuously running shot made it extremely hard to get himself into the movie. He managed it in Rear Window. That was a single set, not a single shot, but he put himself into an apartment next door. That was fine. In Dial M for Murder, again, single set, not a single shot. He threw in an insert of himself in a photograph. And then in Lifeboat, single set, he used the Reduso ad in the newspaper that William Bendix is reading for that cameo. With Rope, people have offered up the spot where he does a cameo. Two different spots, in fact. The first option is right at the beginning, in the street scene below, after the credits have rolled. Here we are. The second option is here.
Would you call me as soon as you hear from David?
I'm sure the dear boy will turn up somehow at the door.
Of course
Janet.
he will.
Yes.
And looking at that, you may be saying, well, what are you talking about? Well, you see that red sign in the background? Yeah, that's supposedly it. A reference to the silhouette of his face that opened all of his Alfred Hitchcock Presents programs. So, what do we make of these? First of all, the street scene. Gotta tell you, I have looked, and I defy you to look as well. I defy you to find him. I cannot find him. There is no way that he is there. Sorry. As for the silhouette, I don't know. There's a couple of things that bother me about that. Number one is, it kind of doesn't look like the silhouette. I mean, maybe the top part does, kind of, but what's the deal with the lower part? Not really sure. It's also a little on the too subtle side. I mean, way in the back for a very short period of time. Hitchcock's a little less subtle with his cameos, so bothers me there. Also, not sure about the timing of the actual creation of that logo. The TV show is a few years in the future. It's a very strange option, but it shows up quite a lot. To me, there is a cameo, but it's very hard to find because it's not physical. It's right here.
I'll take Cary Grant myself.
Oh, so will I. Capricorn, the goatee leaps to find so much.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, he was thrilling in that new thing with Bergman. What is it called now? The something of the something. No, that was the other one. This was just plain something. You know, it was sort of, you know.
It was right on the tip of my tongue.
Mine too. It was just plain something, I'm sure. I adored it. And Bergman.
She's the Virgo type. Like all these, you know.
Oh, I think she's lovely.
So what's going on here? They're discussing movies. What movies? Well, the movie they're referencing, of course, is Hitchcock's previous film, Notorious, which was starring Ingrid Bergman and Cary Grant. Anyone who knows Hitchcock knows this. So it's a verbal cameo, not a physical cameo. The last thing I want to talk about is continuity errors. Now, continuity errors are when something in a shot doesn't match. Some mistake has been made that they just missed. Alfred Hitchcock is a master filmmaker. He knows movies inside and out. He can work through a continuity error better than anybody, I'm sure. However, he's still allowed a couple of mistakes. And there are a few that always kind of bug me just a touch in Rope. And if you don't want to see them, I would say jump to the end of this video right now, because I don't want to spoil anything for you. Not that they're detrimental to the film, but, you know, there are some times I can't watch because I know about. So I don't want to spoil. Okay, you have your chance. On we go. Now, the first here. Watch as the body goes into the chest. The rope is around his neck. Here's another shot. Look to the right of the screen, the end of the chest. See a rope? Nope. Fine.
There, that's much better.
Now we cut to here, and this is a, mini little plot point for this section of the film. Look at that. The rope is extremely prominent. What can you do? What can you do?
Well, go on, yank it out.
I can't.
If Mrs. Wilson were here, she'd yank it out for you.
A second gaffe occurs in the hidden cut of Brandon and Rupert speaking. Of course, Rupert has the two desserts in his hand. Take a look. Watch as Rupert is on the left-hand side of the doorway before the cut, and then after, he's on the right-hand side.
2 desserts, Mr. Cadet?
Minor, I agree, but here we are. There's a third, and this is later in the film. Rupert is describing what could have happened to David, and the camera follows around his description. Now watch the position of the chair.
Now, as I recall, David was quite strong. He'd have to be knocked out. So I'd move quietly around behind the chair and hit him on the head with something.
Basically, it's been moved to accommodate the camera. It's been turned a certain way. At least that's how it looks to me, anyway. And finally, there's a very odd, tiny little cut right here, right in the middle of Rupert's speech at the end.
When you serve food from his grave? Well, I don't know what you thought or what you are, but I know what you've done. You've murdered.
Very minor. Something clearly happened while he was doing the speech. They've snipped out probably just a few frames. It's visible. If you aren't looking for that kind of thing, you would never notice it. But there it is. But that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to nitpick one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock films anymore. I want to go watch it again because I love this film. And I urge you to go find it yourself. Take a look. If you've never seen it before, take a look for the first time. If you have, watch it again just to, if nothing else, appreciate the way it was made. It's certainly unique in his body of work, for sure. He did try to do the sort of long, continuous take thing in his next film, Under Capricorn. I think Rope does it better, and it's just a better film in general. Again, my opinion. And that's all I have to say, except thank you for watching. If you have any comments to make about what I've said or what I haven't said, please write them in the comments field. I'll be happy to read them. This is Steve Malisi. Have a wonderful day.